morning to everyone present here. I'm Vaishnavi Rao, head girl of AKIA BTM, and I would like to welcome you all to the CMR AKIA Virtual Career Camp 2021-2022. Before we start, I request you to keep your microphones switched off and cameras switched on. Lively faces always brighten up the room. In case any questions arise, drop them into the chat box to the Q&A handle managed by Ms. Ranjani Raghavan, and it shall be addressed in the Q&A session. It is very well said that marketing is not collecting, selling, and buying. It's about planting relationships and trust in the product that is designed after a lot of sensitive thinking. And who better to tell us about it than someone who has built a successful career on the foundation of her analytical skills. Today we have with us Ms. Divya Krishnan, who is a digital marketing and analytics professional with 15 years of experience in driving analytics-based decision-making for world-class companies. She has expertise across web and marketing and analytics marketing analytic techniques, including funnel analytics, campaign measurement, testing, and predictive analytics. She is currently working at Measured, a company that helps brands grow by identifying media's incremental contribution to business outcomes. She is a member of the Digital Analytics Association and twice has been nominated by Quanti Awards for Top Analytics Team. Thank you for being with us today. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks for the lovely introduction. Very happy to be here today and meet with all of you young, bright minds. I'm not able to see your video, but I'm sure there's a lot of young, bright minds in the room today. Great. So yes, this session is about data analytics as a career. So I'd like to keep the session a little, while there is a PowerPoint and I'll be walking through that, I'll try to ensure that I give as much examples about, how I work on a day-to-day basis. So you get a little bit more, it's just not theoretical, but you get a little bit more insights into, what this career looks like. Great. Okay, so what's been happening, right? So in the last 10 years, there's been a huge surge in the amount of data that's available, across every industry, right? So to help companies and even other institutions make sense of all of this data, there's been a huge growth in the demand for data professionals. Let me share my screen. Great. So how do you ride this wave, right? There is a huge demand for analytics professionals. So how do you ride this wave as a career option? I will like to start with the fundamentals. Let's understand why analytics. Why is analytics important for everybody, be it a commercial organization, be it any institution, right? And how big is this industry? How has this industry grown over the last few years? And what the next few years look like? So, is the growth already happened? Do you think that this is going to be a hot career option even going ahead? I'd like to talk about that. And then go a little bit deep into what are the roles or what are the job profiles in this industry? Is it just the analyst role? Are there other roles supporting? Right, let's understand the entire set of roles involved in an analytics organization. And then most importantly, look at what are the skill sets. So typically, people associate an analytics job with high skill sets in mathematics and statistics, right? But you might be interested to know that mathematical ability is not a big predictor of success in this industry. There are a whole lot of other skill sets as well. So let's understand what that looks like. And then in the end, I leave you with some resources using which you can test yourself, test your aptitude for a career in analytics. Great. So let's start with the fundamentals. These are some of the most important or most common keywords and terms associated with the word analytics in the business context. So let's do a small exercise. How about the audience gives me the most important needs or most important uses of analytics, right? So can we have people type on chat? What do you think are the most important needs for analytics?
Yes, you all can put it on the chat and put it to
Yes.
everyone so everyone knows what you're doing.
I mean, there's a lot of keywords here. You can just pick the most important from here, or you can have your own. Okay, I see customer acquisition. I see logical thinking and reasoning. Anything more you can think of? Like, why do we need analytics, right? Why do companies need analysts, or what does the analyst do that helps companies, and hence companies think it's important to invest in this? Prediction, improve the business. Great, nice answers. Evaluate something, right? You have a bunch of options and data helps you evaluate what's better, what's worse. To do some research. Smart suggestion, absolutely, we're living in a smart world. Decision making, absolutely, great. Okay, I see a lot more answers coming now. Okay, so I'll take the question back to myself. So clearly it includes everything that's been put out on chat, right? So I would say the two most important things are, one is to measure performance. You might have come across this saying that you cannot manage what you cannot measure, right? So first of all, you need to be able to measure performance, know what the current status is, know what the current, level of performance is. And then using this, you have to be able to make decisions. So again, the most important contribution of analytics in any context is the fact that it helps somebody makes decisions based on data. Right, today everything is called a data-driven organization. It's a data-driven world. These are some of the common keywords that people keep using, and that is because the role of data is to drive businesses, just using data as the common fuel, right? Okay, so at the beginning I mentioned that there's been a huge surge just in the amount of data, right? Now, to help use data or leverage this data, you also need a bunch of other things. Like what? Like you need computing, you need storage, you need BI tools, and then you need smart people who will work with all of this, right? So what's the value of this industry? How has this industry grown over the last 10 years or so? Let's look at that. Right. So we see that since 2011, there's been a huge growth cycle in the data market, and the market is made up of software and people and everything that I just mentioned, right? And currently, the market is at about $60 billion, and we are expecting that in the next 6 years, it's going to cross $110 billion, $103 billion, right? So it's a huge market and it is growing. So clearly we are still in the, it's a rising wave and we are still in the middle of it. So, I'd like you to know that when you come out into the, job market and when you pick up career options, this is still going to be a very, very hot and very, very important career that's going to be there, right? Data is not going away anywhere. It's just going to increase and increase. Okay, so we've established the fact that analytics is important and the fact that the industry is growing. So you have a lot of career options. So what are the roles, right? What involves working with data? So let's look at a typical set of actions that are common to every data project. So any data project involves these 5 steps. It starts with capturing data, right? It then works, you have to then take the data, make it analysis ready. So that's called data preparation. It's also called data cleaning. Raw data is usually never, ready for analysis. You have to like massage it, clean it, and make it ready. So that's the next step. And then you have to store this data in databases. So that's the moving part. So once the data is captured and made ready for analysis, that's when the analyst comes in and starts analyzing the data. And it's also very important to not just analyze, but present the data. So today we have a whole lot of software options. We have dashboards. We have, in Excel has a lot of features, right? So presenting the data well is a very important function. And then the cycle ends with the most important of all, which is taking actions, right? So these are the typical data tasks or functions that are involved. So what are the job roles in each of these? So in capturing data, it's typically a developer's role, and developers typically work with programming languages. It could be Java, it could be SQL, right? They develop applications that help capture the data. So in the context of digital marketing, which is what I work as an analyst, capturing data would mean taking data from the website, right? So when people visit a website, we capture that data, we capture every hit of every visitor, and then store that data to then ask questions like how many people visited the website, what was the most viewed content, right? So that is the capturing task which a developer does. And then when it comes to storing and preparing data, it's usually a data architect role. So the data architect, they work in databases. They take the raw data, they then transform it to more readable and usable data. That's the architect's role. And post this comes the data analyst. And data analyst today is, there are two important roles there again. We have the data analyst and we have the data scientist. So data analyst is usually tasked with doing calculations, applying certain context and filters to the data to be able to answer the right questions. The data scientists, what they do is a lot more technical, and their job is to help predict, help find whether the data that is available can actually help answer. Sometimes you have outliers in the data, sometimes you have very poor quality of data. So the data scientists actually make sure that the data is actually in a healthy and the quality of the data is good enough to actually make decisions on important business outcomes. And then for presenting the data, you have the BI team. So you have BI developers who actually work on complicated dashboard applications. You have the BI analyst who visualizes and comes up with what should be presented on a report. How should the dashboard look like, right? We all know that rather than looking at rows and rows of data on spreadsheets, really want to be able to look at a nice, beautiful, clean looking dashboard, which has colors, which has trends, and people typically are able to grasp the context of the information a lot more easier by looking at dashboards rather than looking at 1,000-row spreadsheet, right? So today, BI teams and BI analysts is again a very, very growing and important role within the whole analytics org that is there. And then, of course, the decision makers. So they could be the C-suite, which are typically the CEOs, the CFOs, who are relying on all this data to help make strategic decisions, or it could even be functional managers. So in the example of, again, digital marketing, where I'm collecting website data, the marketing manager will then take a look at all this data and decide saying, hey, this content works better. It has higher engagement among my audience. So I will make sure that we create more and more of this content as my next strategy, right? So that's what the functional manager will do in his context. So this is the entire set of roles that are available. So these are again roles, but what about skill set, right? So in terms of skill sets, typically you have the technical skills. So the developers, the data architects, they are high on technical skills. And of course, the analysts, the data scientists, the data analyst, they are high on the analytics skills. And then the end user are high on the business skills, right? So when you start your career in analytics, you will typically start with one of these three, right? Your first few years could be highly technical or highly analytical. And over time, as you work hands-on on projects, you will start, adding on the other two skills organically, right? And I would say it's very important to have a good mix of all the three skills to be a well-rounded analyst, right? If you do not, let's understand why. If you don't understand the business case, what's the point of going through lots of data and creating beautiful dashboards if it doesn't really relate with the key problems that the business needs to solve, right? So any which way you look at it, it's important to be understanding all of these skill sets. You might be an analyst, but if you don't know what the limitations of the software are, or you don't know, there is, maybe the data is too huge, maybe this is This cannot be run in the time frame that your client wants you to deliver, right? So technical skills are always, or technical constraints are always part of the problems you're solving as well. So yeah, this is very important. And like I said, you will always start with in one of these three, but over time, it's very important to keep learning. So the thing also about the industry is the fact that it's changing by the day. Most industries are, but analytics is a lot more, I would say. The amount of technology that's coming in, it's changing by the day. So on the job learning is literally a part of our daily lives, right? In the last 5 years, the amount of new skills, the amount of new technology that I have picked up has been tremendous, and that's just indicative of how the industry has been growing as well. Okay, so up until now we saw a lot of generic common information about what the analytics role looks like. Next, I'll move on to talking a little bit more specific about my job, what I do, right? So what does my day look like? For any client project, I start with understanding the client's problems. So this is usually a very tricky part. Reason being, clients sometimes cannot define the problem well themselves, right? So somebody might say, "Hey, my website is not performing," or somebody might say, "Hey, I'm not able to increase traffic to my website," or they might say, "Hey, my media investment is not working," right? So it will be typically very generic statements like this that the client comes to you and say, "Hey, solve this for me." So my job next is to then ask the right business questions. What are business questions? Business questions are those kind of questions which help unlock insights regarding a business performance. And the objective is that by answering those questions, you are able to make strategic direction regarding growth or regarding profitability, right? So asking the right business questions, again, is a very, very important skill as an analyst, for which again you should know the business context, right? So if you're working in marketing, or you're working in healthcare, you're working in whatever domain, you should also be able to read up about the domain, understand what the nuts and bolts of that industries are, so that you can ask the right business questions. So coming back to my digital marketing example, right? So the client has now told me that, say their website is not working. They want to be able to increase sales. Let's assume it's an e-commerce website, right? They want to be able to increase sales. So what are the kind of business questions that I might ask, right? So I would start with saying, "Hey, what is the objective of your website? Who is your target audience? Who are your competitors, right? What are your most sold products? Or what is your current sales, and what is your target? What do you want to do in the next 6 months?" So these are some of the questions that I would go through to be able to understand, okay, what direction should I take, right? Now, you can lose a lot of time in analyzing a lot of data, and you could just get lost in all that, right? You want to be able to spend the time in a way that you can get the right answer in the right context and in the most quick. Nobody really has the time for many weeks spent in getting the wrong answer. So again, business questions help us get to the right path very quickly. And then once the objective is clear, we start working with the technical team. So I work with my developers. We bring the right data in. We get the data from the website, from campaign performance, be it media channel performance. We bring all the different data into one place and start preparing. So towards the objective, or towards the planned analysis, all the data is put together. And then once the data is ready, before we get to start, in fact, even before building reports and dashboards, we actually do something called a wireframe. What's a wireframe? We actually visualize on pen and paper saying, I want the final dashboard to look like this. These are the key KPIs. KPIs are key performance indicators. So these are the key KPIs on top. These are the trend lines I want to look at. These are the filters in the dashboard. I want to be able to slice my data by industry, by geography, by customer segment, right? So I plan and visualize saying, what is the important thing that needs to be shown on the website? And then we start preparing data against that. And then the BI team will then build the dashboard to match the wireframe that was planned initially. And then, the dashboard is just the visual layer, but the analyst has to actually go through all that data, look at, say, 3 years of trends, look at the different segments, which products are working, which geographies are working better for which products, right? Those kind of things. And then prepare a final analysis, which is then presented as recommendations to the client, right? So this is a typically 4-week or up to 6 months kind of a cycle where you start with the client problem and then present recommendations. And like I said, the only job of analytics is to help the client make decisions. So, having gone through the first 5 steps, if you don't have a business recommendation to the client, then you probably have not done a good job, right? Great. Okay, so yeah, so that's the crux of what I wanted to share. These are, okay, let me also show you some visual examples since we spoke a lot about dashboards. So this is a sample dashboard where we have key metrics on the top. I mentioned KPIs. So KPIs are key performance indicator like net profit per dollar, right? Or it could be, what's the percentage of sales that is contributed by media? That's this KPI here. So we determine what are the key KPIs for every client and then build a dashboard like this. I know it's not highly visual, but this is the relevant example. We have filters on top, which then the client can slice and dice and say, okay, which channel, which segment, for what kind of, business objective, what works, and then usually a time slice as well. Right, so this is a simple but a very important dashboard in terms of helping CFOs or media marketers make decisions on where to spend their money on digital marketing. This is another example where we again have a customer database. We show against the different channels like Facebook or email or there's a bunch of different types of ad channels here. Against each of these, what's the different lifetime values? So LTV is basically lifetime value, which means to say that, if once I spend some amount on any of these channels, at the end of 6 months, I still get, how much returns from each of these channels. So these are, again, very, very important kind of analysis, which help marketers make decisions on, hey, should I spend more on Facebook? Should I spend more on email, right? How do you know that? How do you know where it's worth spending your money? So this is another example. Right, so that's the crux of my presentation. And I've just added some resources for links where you can go and take an aptitude test and see if analytics is something that's, you could choose as an option. And I've also added some resources on courses, right? So typically, at least up until now, analytics courses are mostly postgraduate courses, right? There are, you would have to typically choose a typical graduate course, engineering or, any graduation course actually. If you can, if it can be, science-based, math-based, it helps. But otherwise, there is really no, there is no requirement in the industry. But any specific analytics training, it's all postgraduate courses. I've just listed a few here. Yeah, that's about it. I am wrapping up. Open to questions. And before that, this is my profile. My LinkedIn link is here if you want to connect. And yeah, other than analytics, the thing that really keeps me going, what I'm really passionate about is trekking. That's a picture of me trekking in the Valley of Flowers in Himachal. So yeah, I will be happy to take questions and have a chat with anybody.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this insightful information. Now we will be taking up the questions. Sure. Please direct your questions to the Q&A handle. While we wait for the questions, we will go ahead with a few shared by our students at the time of registration. So, ma'am, how did you get into this field? Was it a choice or was it by accident?
Right. It was actually a choice, though I did not know that, analytics as an industry is going to become, something so huge and everything. But so I did my master's in marketing. And when I finished my course, by the time I had done some internships with agencies, with media planning agencies, And I had seen like what the options available were. I also had an offer as a brand manager, so consulting and brand management was very exciting as well. But somewhere I made a decision saying, in the initial years, it's very marketing can become very art and craft kind of thing, because people, it really takes a lot of years of experience to be able to come up with strategic marketing, right? And until then, what do you do as a fresher? What do you do, right? So somewhere I decided that if I invest my initial years in more a database job, then people will take me seriously, right? Here I am, I'm giving you important analysis. So my years of experience and those things should not matter when compared to people who are 10, 15 years into the industry, right? So that's how I looked at my career start. So I made a conscious choice to go into the analysis side of marketing. And interestingly, that's the time when digital marketing actually started, right? So there was a talk that I was attending by the head of Yahoo. Yahoo was very big at that time. Your generation may not know, but Yahoo was a huge, player as a digital website at that point. So the head of Yahoo, he gave a talk and he said, digital is going to be the most measured industry. Again, like TV or radio or print, these channels are not very measurable, right? Like TV is usually done using a small sample of people. But he said digital is going to be an industry where it's going to be 100% measurement. Every hit to a website can be measured. Every ad channel delivery can be measured. And to me, that seemed like, wow, right? This is going to be so huge. And I made a very early entry into digital marketing. And then from then on, it's just been like so much of growth, and the industry has transformed tremendously. So I'm thankful I made some good decisions.
Yes, ma'am. Now we have a question by Arundhati Das. She's asking, what are the requirements to do a digital marketing internship? Anything we should know before hand to get internships in this field?
Not really. I would say this is a very easy to sort of get in and learn. There isn't, and I think the good part is all the information, right? Your learning resources, everything is available online. Literally, if you go into any research into, hey, what is paid advertising, hey, what is organic marketing, right? If you just search for it, there's tremendous amount of information available, which also makes it for companies like us to get interns in, right? Get the intern, you point them to those resources, they can self-train, self-learn, and then they are ready to pick up a project. So I would say it's very easy to learn. And no, there are no requirements of pre-knowledge that is typically required. I think people can learn very quickly on the training time itself.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, now you talked about your initial years. So any key learnings that you picked up from those initial years, ma'am?
Yeah, I would say the initial years, it's very important to, while your job might be very specific, right? You're just working with this data, and then you're just doing this set of actions and preparing this report and delivering. It's very important to just keep keep your eye open, or keep your try to understand what the overall picture is, right? Like, what is the problem? How will somebody use this data? Because that's very hard to get. It's very important, whether you're an intern or you've started on your first job, you keep pushing your manager, whoever you're working under, to give you this context, because this context helps you become a better analyst over time, right? Otherwise, somebody can say, hey, do these 6 tasks, and you will do that, but you will not really, you may improve in Excel, or you may improve in some data skills. But to really become a better analyst, it's important to push and say, hey, I want to know what's the bigger objective here. I want to know how this data is useful. And then that will really make you a better analyst over time.
Yes. Ma'am, you talked about technology as well.
Yes.
So what is the role that technology is playing in this industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think in the world of data, technology is everything, right? I also emphasized upon the kind of software, computing, storage, all of these are or are, in fact, with every leap in the technology being available, the data function grows, right? Or it becomes easier, but also you can do a lot more. You're also experienced that a lot of you use smart devices. You have your voice assistants, Alexa, and so on. How are those things working? That's because of the technologies that's suddenly being opened up, right?
Yes.
So similarly, even in your day-to-day job, it's technology that's empowering you and technology that's letting you do a lot more than what you were able to do before. So it's and it, typically, yeah, it's everything. Technology is everything. The other than the fact that the analyst has to finally put his mind and help you make decisions, everything else is powered by technology.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we have a question from Shreya. What inspired you to do digital marketing and analytics?
Yeah, like I said, the change from when digital marketing really was going, it was just, in fact, in India, it was really nascent at that time. I Okay, what inspired me? I don't know, the fact that I think probably just that it is so much more measurable, because I started my career in TV measurement, and that time TV and the channels, that was the biggest thing. Long before OTT hit our worlds, right? TV was the biggest media channel. So I was working in television for 1 year, and I saw what the limitations of that measurement were, right? And then when somebody told me that digital is so much more measurable, I just jumped. The potential of this whole new world is what probably inspired me.
So what is the most you like about this field? What is that one thing that you like the most?
Yeah, I think the thing is the fact that what the answer is, or what you're going to be able to deliver, is never clear, right? You don't know what you're doing. You know the process. You typically apply the same process for project after project, but in each project, you have that insight, right? That, hey, I found this and this is relevant to you and this is impacting your business. That unknown factor is something that I really love. You don't know, and sometimes it's risky as well. Sometimes you just don't find the right answer. Sometimes you don't have good recommendations, and that's also a real part of your daily life. But the fact that you are chasing the unknown, and you then deliver this insight which the client absolutely loves, I think that's what I really love about this.
Ma'am, as Siddharth Ramachandran asks, with AI/ML, wouldn't a lot of current data analytic jobs become redundant and soon become very niche?
Yes, AI/ML is a major part of everything that's going on now. I wouldn't say it would become redundant. I would say analysts have to now upskill themselves to be able to work with data scientists, or to work with those AI tools, right? But again, let's be very clear about the fact that, however, things change, the importance of this skill set, right, which is the analyst who is trying to solve problems. Because machines, you can run models, yes, you can do them faster now than how people were doing earlier, right? So you have speed, you have efficiency, you can apply that at a large scale. All of those are helped by machines. But evaluating a model, right, saying, does this make sense or not? Is it applicable to actually get my revenues up? Those kind of things are still human based. Those decisions have to be done by humans with the right context. So I wouldn't say any of these will become redundant. You just have to change, you just have to upskill and use that technology or that set of processes now. But these 6 steps that I mentioned, those will always be there, right? You're going from taking data to making decisions. Those steps are going to be always there.
And we have one more question by Tanmay Sahu. What are your views on future metaverse and credibility of NFTs?
Yes, they are here. They are coming. They're already here. So and that's the world that we're all living in, right? Things are changing and those directions have already been set, even the AI based, right? So a lot of AI is going to, take over, or AI is going to get embedded in everything that, currently we are experiencing. But from the context of this discussion, which is a career in data analytics, right? Those are, I would say, those are just more roles or profiles that will get filled up, right? Like I said, working with data and helping businesses or institutions make decisions. If you look at that continuum, you have these different roles. Those roles will get more, they will be more complex or more technical roles that will come up. So okay, you since you mentioned NFTs, or since you mentioned something else, so those are again different applications, right? So in the world of finance or in the world of investment, that's a new thing. So again, in the context of this discussion, I'd just like you to understand that these new things are going to change, are going to are going to increase in importance, but be it technical skills or business skills, these basic fundamentals are going to remain the same, right?
Yes.
You might have to pick up that technology and work with that technology. That's about it.
Yes, now we have one more question. I'm just waiting.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, what is that which you dislike regarding this industry? Something that you dislike?
Dislike is definitely, it's more of a day-to-day thing. The quality of data, regardless of the application. Today, we are still living in, say 60 to 70% of any data that I work with is only usable. The rest is usually, junk and outliers and those kind of things. So even though data collection is automated, and even though there are all these softwares, the quality of data is always, it's still at that threshold. It's not like, hey, I take all the data and hey, it's easy for me. It's never that. So that's something that I think is a little painful part of an analytics job.
Okay, ma'am. Yes. Aditi Surya asked, how do we know what the right way to determine our goals for campaigning are? Example, a marketing strategy, we take our KPIs. How do we give them a target or goal number correctly?
Good question. So targets are, based on business objectives or based on past trends, right? So if you already know that your last 3 quarters performance has been at this rate, then you typically set a slightly higher target. It is also based on how much budgets you have. If you have, only the same amount of budget as you had last time, then your targets cannot be suddenly much higher. Marketing is also an investment-led thing. If you pay for advertisements, then you get, results. So those kind of things, right? So how do you know? It usually comes with, certain experience of having done this in the past. But as rules of thumb, you could use, past data. You could also do based on, what the, desired growth is, right? You can say, I want to grow 10% over where I am today. So I'll set the target there. Does that answer the question, or was it slightly different context?
Aditi, does it answer your question? Give a thumbs up.
Okay.
I hope it. Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the next question, Tanmay again asks, is this NFT boom just a bubble?
I am not an expert in NFTs, please. I do not want to comment on, because let me say that I'm not the right person to answer this.
Okay, we'll move to the next question. What is your percentage in the success of any company?
Okay, I would rephrase this question as what, how much can analytics claim as, what is the impact of analytics in any company, right? Let me rephrase it like that. That's a very good question and a very hard answer, and I'll give you that hard answer. I quote this also, personally, I find this quite humorous. Analytics is one of the most high risk jobs, because like I said, it's so vague, the contribution that you could potentially do. You could hit or you could miss in terms of business impact, because you can spend lots of time and energy in analyzing and coming up with something, but it may or may not realistically, it may not move the needle, right? It may not increase revenues or reduce costs and those kind. That is the objective, but doesn't mean every single time you're going to hit that. So it is a very risky profile to be an analyst. While it might sound glamorous to some, hopefully some people who have listened to this, but it is a little risky profile as well. So what is the real impact? In fact, there are organizations, and in India, even when I've been in industry conferences, some organizations, they make it very clear that when they seed this whole new analytics group, they put data scientists and all those people into that group. They give them very clear objectives, saying, if you do not show me a 7% increase in my top line, like 7% increase in sales, or some 2% increase in my profitability, then we are not going to continue with this group in the next year, right? So they give them very hard business deadlines, because that's how it is. You don't want to go and chase and say, okay, I want to build X dashboard. Nobody cares about that, right? People care about real outcomes. So there are businesses who define that way. So what is the real impact? I would say, it depends on how it's been structured in the org. We know that there are companies who have completely built themselves up on data, right? Like you all know Netflix. We all know the fact that the way Netflix has grown and been able to capture everybody's attention is not just the quality of the content, but the way they have, served the right content to the right audience. The thumbnails, everything is personalized, the high personalization, able to read and suggest the right content. Those are the data-driven things that has helped Netflix grow, right? So we know that the contribution could be 200, 300%. The contribution could be 5% in a very large company. So it could really vary. It could really vary.
Now we'll take this one last question and wrap up. Siddharth again asks, for a startup, what are the determining factors we must consider before setting a goal and then go to market our product?
Great. Yeah, I love startup questions. I'm part of a startup now as well. So, so how do you set your goals? So startups, it's typically the only thing you're trying to do in the initial 6 months to 1 year is the fact that you're trying to establish the market, right? You're trying to validate the fact that whatever is your solution or your product, you're trying to establish the fact that yes, there is a market for this, there is a need for this, and that I can meet that need. These are the only two things that you're trying to do. Because most startups are trying to enter into a new problem solving, right? So you want to say that this is the market size, this is the revenue that I expect on a yearly basis, and your product or solution is typically not ready, but you're just entering in to establish that yes, there is a market for this, right? So that itself is a good enough goal if you have clarity on what you're building and you can estimate the market size. And then they come up with something called an MVP, which is a minimum viable product, which is to say that these are the, while typically my product might need 100 features, if I build 3 features, or it may not be 3, realistically, maybe like 10 features. These are the 10 minimum viable features that need to be there so that I can again understand if the market likes my product or not, right? Then you have all these additional good to have features. But if I once build these features and the market accepts, then I know my startup has some potential.
Yes. I think that answers all your questions. So as we come to the end of this session, I would like to thank ma'am for being part of our career camp and giving us an insight into the world of digital analytics. It has been a very informative session, and I'm sure the students have a better understanding of the requirements and opportunities in digital marketing. It was a pleasure interacting with you, ma'am. Before we end the session, I'd like to inform all the participants to fill the attendance and feedback form shared in the chat box. Please fill it before leaving the session. At 11:45, we have the alumni talk. We request you to join 5 minutes before the commencement of the session. I hope you all had a good time, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a lovely audience.